Humanity's greatest power play began not with weapons, but with water. Ancient engineers performed what seemed like magic, bending entire rivers to their will and redirecting the very flow of history. This is the story of the Great Water Maze, a forgotten chapter of engineering where control over water meant control over destiny. By the end, you will understand how these aquatic labyrinths built and destroyed empires, a truth that reshapes our entire map of the past. We will uncover how a society in the desert built invisible rivers underground, and why the most advanced ancient civilization left behind a hydraulic mystery that still baffles experts. What does it truly mean for a civilization to master its water? That moment of realization must have struck like lightning across a dry plain. For generations, people had watched the same cycles of destruction and scarcity. A river would overflow, washing away homes and fields, only to then retreat and leave behind cracked, thirsty earth. The relationship was one of fear and supplication. But then, a new thought emerged, fragile yet revolutionary. What if we could ask the water to behave? This was not about fighting nature, but about learning its language so thoroughly that one could whisper a new set of instructions. The first engineers were, above all, master observers. They watched beavers weave branches and mud to create serene ponds from rushing streams. They saw how a single fallen log could divert a trickle of rainwater, carving a new path down a hillside. In these natural phenomena, they recognized a powerful principle. Water follows the path of least resistance. It is predictable, it can be guided. To internalize this was to change the human story forever. The psychological leap was monumental. It meant replacing a worldview of helplessness with one of agency. Instead of praying for rain or begging a river to be merciful, someone stood on its banks and thought, "I can build a different outcome." This was the birth of hydraulic ambition, a courage forged in the desperate need to survive. What drove them was the stark reality that without control over water, there was no food, no stability, no future. That desperation fueled an innovation so profound it would redirect the course of history itself. That fragile spark of agency found its first great expression in the sun-baked lands between two rivers. Around 6,000 years before our common era, Mesopotamian engineers began a monumental task. They had to solve a brutal two-part problem. Every spring, snowmelt from distant mountains would send the Tigris and Euphrates raging over their banks, wiping out everything in their path. Then the long, scorching summer would arrive, turning the land to dust. Their survival depended on taming this cycle, and their solution was to build a labyrinth of water. They did not just dig ditches, they engineered the world's first sophisticated irrigation networks, a web of controls so advanced it would be admired for millennia. Their most brilliant invention was the Qanat. Imagine a series of vertical shafts like wells, dug into a mountainside to tap a hidden aquifer. From the bottom of these shafts, workers carved a gently sloping underground tunnel that ran for miles, sometimes tens of miles, all the way to their fields and cities. This was genius. By moving the water underground, they completely defeated the desert sun. There was no evaporation. The water arrived cool, clean, and in precisely the volume the tunnel was designed to carry. It was a silent river flowing beneath the sand, a secret weapon against the arid climate. Above ground, their canal networks were just as masterful. These were not simple trenches. They featured carefully calculated gradients, ensuring water flowed with just the right speed, fast enough to avoid silting up but slow enough to prevent erosion. They built diversion weirs to redirect flow and intricate distribution gates made of wood or stone. a farmer could open a gate to send a measured amount of water to his field, then close it to send the flow to his neighbor's land. This was precision engineering on a massive scale. Water management became so fundamental to their society that it was written into their most sacred laws. The Code of Hammurabi, one of the oldest legal documents in existence, did not just deal with theft or murder. It contained specific regulations about water rights. If a man was careless and allowed his canal to break, flooding his neighbor's field, he had to compensate him for the lost grain. Everyone was responsible for maintaining the canals that served their community. This was not merely infrastructure, it was the bedrock of their civilization. These hydraulic marvels transformed the Fertile Crescent into an agricultural powerhouse so productive it could support a new kind of human gathering, the city. For the first time, not everyone had to farm. This surplus of food allowed for specialization, for scribes and priests, for artisans and soldiers. It directly enabled the birth of writing, of bureaucracy, of empires. The control of water did not just irrigate crops, it cultivated civilization itself. But this hard-won control came with a hidden and ultimately devastating price. While Mesopotamia built its complex networks, another civilization was mastering its river in a completely different way. The Nile was Egypt's lifeblood, a predictable yet immensely powerful force that dictated the rhythm of existence. Its annual inundation was not a destructive threat to be fought, but a seasonal gift to be managed. When the floodwaters arrived, they deposited a layer of rich, black silt across the floodplain, the very source of Egypt's fertility. The challenge was to capture this bounty without being overwhelmed by it. Egyptian engineers developed a brilliantly simple system called basin irrigation. They constructed vast, low-lying fields surrounded by earthen walls. When the Nile rose, they would breach these walls at just the right moment, allowing the floodwaters to rush in and fill the basins like giant, shallow bathtubs. The water would then be trapped for weeks, giving the precious silt time to settle and the water to soak deep into the parched soil. Only then would they drain the excess water back into the river, leaving behind perfectly prepared and nourished farmland. This was a dance with the river, not a war against it. Their foresight was remarkable. Along the riverbanks, they built structures called nilometers. These were beautiful stone staircases that descended into the river, with precise measurement markings carved into their walls. Priests and officials would carefully monitor the rising water level against these marks. A reading that was too low meant drought and famine were coming. A reading that was too high signaled devastating floods. This was the world's first sophisticated hydrological forecasting system, allowing them to predict the harvest, plan their planting, and even adjust tax rates years in advance. They thought on a grand scale, too. One of their most ambitious projects was the canal known as Bar Yosef. This artificial waterway was designed to connect the mighty Nile to the vast natural depression of the Fayum. The result was the creation of Lake Moeris, a colossal reservoir the size of a small sea. In years of exceptional flood, this lake would absorb the Nile's excess, preventing destruction downstream. Then, during the dry season, it would release its stored water back into the canal system, sustaining the region when other areas were parched. This was water management on a staggering, almost timeless scale. The success of this symbiotic relationship with the Nile created an agricultural surplus so immense it powered one of history's most iconic civilizations. It was this surplus that fed the armies of laborers who built the pyramids, that supported the artisans, scribes, and priests, and that provided the underlying stability for a society that endured for 3,000 years. Egypt proved that the ultimate engineering wisdom sometimes lies not in forcing a river to change, but in learning to move in time with its eternal rhythm. Far to the east, in the sprawling river plains of the Indus Valley, another civilization was solving the water puzzle with a quiet, systematic brilliance that still echoes through the ruins of its cities. Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were not just collections of buildings, they were masterpieces of urban hydraulic design. Walking through these cities thousands of years ago, you would have seen something unprecedented. Beneath the orderly streets ran a network of covered, brick-lined sewers, a subterranean labyrinth channeling waste away from homes and public spaces. Individual houses had their own bathrooms, many with a simple yet revolutionary feature, an early form of the flush toilet, where water would wash waste into the city's main drains. This was a society obsessed with cleanliness and water control on a civic scale. They built elaborate sedimentation tanks, allowing silt and impurities to settle out of the water before it flowed onward. At the heart of Mohenjo-Daro stood the Great Bath, a large, watertight pool that may have served for ritual purification, but also functioned as a massive public reservoir. And everywhere there were wells, providing a reliable, clean source of drinking water for the entire urban population. This was not merely about convenience, it was a profound understanding that a healthy city required a managed water cycle. Their genius extended beyond the city walls. The agricultural abundance that supported these vast populations depended on an intricate dance with the monsoon. They constructed extensive networks of canals to divert water from the Indus River and its tributaries, and they built sophisticated water storage facilities to capture the precious seasonal rains, ensuring a steady supply for their fields throughout the year. What makes their achievements utterly breathtaking is the silence that surrounds them. Unlike the Egyptians with their hieroglyphs or the Mesopotamians with their cuneiform tablets, the people of the Indus Valley left behind no deciphered written records. We have no king lists, no engineering manuals, no proclamations of hydraulic law. Their entire water management system was a feat of pure, transmitted engineering intuition. Every brick in a sewer, every slope of a drain, every placement of a well speaks of a deep, shared knowledge passed down through generations without the need for written words. The sophistication of their systems points to a society with an extraordinary degree of social organization and technical skill, one that rivaled and in some ways surpassed its contemporaries. Yet the very secrets of their hydraulic mastery remain locked away, a silent challenge to archaeologists who must piece together the story of this great water maze from the physical stones alone. Meanwhile, in a river valley half a world away, a different kind of water maze was taking shape, one designed not to fight a river's power but to collaborate with it. The Min River in ancient China was a temperamental giant. Each summer, meltwater from the mountains would send torrents crashing down, sweeping away entire villages and the fields that fed them. Then, in the drier months, the same river would shrink, leaving communities desperate and crops withering. This cycle of feast and famine seemed an unbreakable curse until an engineer named Lai Bing arrived with a radical idea. His assignment from the Qin state was simple in its demand but staggering in its ambition: pacify the Min River for good. Around 256 years before the Common Era, Lai Bing and his son began work on the Dujiangyan irrigation system. They rejected the obvious solution of building a massive dam. They understood that a dam on such a silt-heavy river would quickly clog, becoming useless or even dangerously unstable. Instead, they chose a path of profound insight. They would not block the river, they would persuade it. Their plan was to build a man-made island right in the middle of the river's flow. This island, known as the Fish Mouth Levee because of its pointed, aerodynamic shape, performed a simple yet miraculous act. It split the Min River into two channels. The inner channel was dug deep and narrow, designed to carry a consistent, life-giving flow of water toward the farmlands of the Chengdu Plain, even during the dry season. The outer channel remained wide and shallow, serving as the main path for floodwaters and, crucially, for carrying away the heavy sediment that would have otherwise choked the system. This was only the first part of their genius. Further downstream, they constructed a spillway called the Flying Sand Weir. This feature was a masterpiece of passive engineering. When water levels were normal, it remained quiet, but during a flood, the increased pressure would automatically push excess water over this low barrier and back into the main river, preventing the irrigation canals from overflowing. Even more cleverly, the specific angle and velocity of the flow at this point were calculated to scour settled silt from the riverbed and flush it through the spillway, a self-cleaning mechanism that required no human intervention. The entire system was a single, cohesive instrument tuned to the river's own rhythms. It required no moving parts, no gates to be manually opened or closed. It simply worked year after year, century after century. The result was an agricultural miracle. The once volatile Chengdu Plain was transformed into a land of such abundance it earned the name Land of Heaven. This reliable food supply became the economic engine for the Qin state, directly fueling its military campaigns and its eventual unification of China. The Dujiangyan system is more than an ancient relic. It is a philosophy carved into a riverbed. It embodies a principle that modern engineers are only now fully appreciating, that the most resilient and sustainable solutions come not from conquering nature, but from understanding its laws so deeply that we can work within them. This project still functions today, watering fields and supporting communities, a silent testament to a 2,000-year-old conversation between human ingenuity and the enduring power of water. The Roman appetite for water was as vast as their empire itself. While earlier civilizations coaxed and negotiated with their rivers, Rome declared outright dominion, bending entire landscapes to quench the thirst of their million-strong capital. Their solution was not a hidden Qanat or a gentle basin, but the aqueduct, a monumental declaration of intent carved in stone. These were not mere water channels, they were the architecture of conquest itself, marching across valleys and through mountains to proclaim that Roman order could prevail over any terrain. The sheer ambition was staggering. Roman engineers designed channels that carried water for dozens of miles, from pristine mountain springs to the heart of bustling cities. Their most brilliant feat was harnessing gravity with mathematical precision. Some aqueducts maintained gradients so shallow they dropped only a single foot for every 200 feet of distance, a slope so gentle the water would flow steadily without eroding the delicate channel walls. This required a level of surveying accuracy that seems almost impossible without modern tools. They had to calculate the precise descent across vast, uneven landscapes, knowing that a single miscalculation would mean stagnant water or a destructive, rushing torrent. The Pont du Gard in southern France stands as a breathtaking monument to this genius. Its 3 towering tiers of golden arches stride across a wide river valley, a structure of such perfect proportions and balance that it feels both impossibly heavy and gracefully light. The water channel at the very top is a mere speck compared to the massive stone blocks below, a stark reminder that this entire colossal enterprise existed for a thin, continuous stream of liquid. It was not just a bridge for water, it was a statement that Roman civilization could cross any divide. But the aqueducts were only the most visible part of a much larger hydraulic machine. Before water even entered the city, it would flow through massive sedimentation tanks where dirt and impurities would settle out. Then, at distribution castles, the flow was meticulously divided among lead and ceramic pipes, directing it to different parts of the city. This water fed public fountains that served the common people, opulent bath complexes that were centers of social life, and even the private villas of the wealthy. It powered grain mills and flushed out the city's revolutionary sewer system, the Cloaca Maxima. This comprehensive control of water allowed Rome to sustain an urban population density that would not be seen again in Europe for over 1,000 years. The baths, in particular, were more than just places to get clean. They were monumental symbols of Roman identity, vast complexes with hot rooms, cold plunges, and swimming pools, all made possible by the relentless flow of the aqueducts. Here, citizenship was reinforced through shared ritual and the luxury of abundant water, a luxury that Rome alone could provide. In this way, the engineering of water became inseparable from the project of empire. The aqueduct was a physical manifestation of Roman power, a clear line drawn from the disciplined order of the legionary camp to the conquered territory it now traversed. It demonstrated that to be Roman was to live within a managed environment where nature itself answered to human command. Deep beneath the sun-scorched deserts of Persia, a hidden river network flowed in perfect silence. While the Romans built monuments to water, Persian engineers were carving labyrinths beneath the sand, mastering a technology of profound elegance, the Qanat. This was not a structure meant to impress the eye, but one designed for pure, enduring function. A Qanat begins at the foot of a mountain, where rainwater seeps deep into the earth, forming a hidden aquifer. The engineers would dig a mother well down to this water table. Then the true work began. They would tunnel backward away from the mountain for miles, carving a subterranean channel with a slope so gentle, barely 1 degree, that water would flow effortlessly by gravity alone. To build this tunnel, they dug a line of vertical shafts from the surface down to the tunnel's planned path, like a dotted line of wells stretching toward their destination. Workers would descend these shafts to excavate the horizontal passage, hauling the earth up and out. These shafts also served as ventilation and, for centuries after, as maintenance access points. Imagine the precision required. Without modern tools, they had to ensure the tunnel maintained its perfect, shallow descent across dozens of miles of unseen, underground terrain. A single miscalculation and the water would either pool uselessly or flow with such force it would erode the tunnel walls. Some of these hydraulic arteries stretched for 40 miles or more, a testament to an almost unimaginable perseverance and geometric skill. The reward for this colossal effort was a water supply that defied the desert itself. Because the water traveled underground, it was completely protected from the evaporating sun. It arrived in villages and fields cool, clean, and in a steady, predictable flow, turning barren ground into lush oases. These oases became the beating hearts of empires, allowing cities like Persepolis to flourish in landscapes that would otherwise be uninhabitable. The Qanat did more than water crops, it fueled history. Its influence flowed along the Silk Road, where caravans depended on the life-giving stations established at Qanat outlets. This technology became a quiet engine of global trade and cultural exchange. The knowledge required to sustain these systems created a specialized class of water masters, men who understood the whispers of the earth and passed their secrets from father to son for generations. The most stunning legacy of the Qanat is its longevity. While empires crumbled and cities turned to dust, many of these underground rivers kept flowing. Some have delivered water continuously for 3,000 years, a silent, enduring partnership between human ingenuity and the hidden veins of the planet. High in the thin air of the Andes, where the very act of breathing is a struggle, ancient engineers performed a miracle of sheer will. They looked upon the steep, seemingly impassable mountain slopes and saw not an obstacle, but a canvas for cultivation. Pre-Columbian civilizations culminating with the Inca mastered the art of mountain water management, transforming vertiginous terrain into a breathtaking tapestry of agricultural terraces. Their challenge was immense. They had to capture the fleeting water from mountain springs and melting glaciers, then coax it across impossible gradients without it washing everything away in a torrent. Their solution was a symphony in stone and water. They built stone-lined canals that snaked along the mountainsides, engineered with a precise, gentle slope that guided water for miles. These channels were more than just ditches, they were works of art. Their joints fitted so perfectly they minimized leakage, ensuring every precious drop reached its destination. At a place called Tupon, this engineering genius is on full display. Here, a complex of stone channels, plazas, and agricultural terraces functions like a textbook of hydraulic principles. Water dances through a series of fountains and cascades, demonstrating a masterful control of water pressure and flow dynamics. The engineers built multiple, redundant channels, a clear sign they understood the need for maintenance and flow control. It was a living, flowing system designed with both beauty and brute efficiency. Perhaps the most enigmatic of these sites is Moray. Here, giant, concentric circular terraces sink deep into the earth, creating a series of natural bowls. Each level descends into a different microclimate, with temperature variations of many degrees between the top and bottom. Sophisticated water channels fed each of these rings independently. This was not just a farm, it was likely a vast agricultural laboratory. The Inca could experiment with crops, testing which varieties of maize or potatoes would thrive at which altitude and temperature, all within a single, controlled site. This ability to artificially create and manage microclimates is a concept that feels astonishingly modern. To support these terraces, they constructed filtration systems using layers of gravel and sand to purify water before it reached the crops. They built storage reservoirs to capture and hold water during the rainy season, creating a lifeline for the long, dry periods. This entire hydraulic network was the backbone of an empire. It allowed the Inca to feed vast populations and support armies and administrators across a realm of extreme geographical challenges. They turned the mountains, their greatest defensive barrier, into their most productive farmland. This was engineering as an act of defiance, a declaration that even the most formidable natural obstacles could be overcome with enough observation, patience, and stone. But this mastery of water for nourishment was only half the story. A new chapter began when engineers realized a river's current could do more than just carry a boat or turn a simple grinding stone. It could become the driving force for an entire economy. Across medieval Europe, the gentle splash of the waterwheel became the heartbeat of industry. The earliest horizontal wheels were humble devices, little more than a paddle wheel on its side, turning a millstone directly above it. But the leap to vertical wheels was a revolution in power. By mounting the wheel upright and transferring its rotation through a complex system of wooden gears, engineers could multiply its force dramatically. They did not settle for a single design, they created specialized wheels for every type of river. The undershot wheel, with its paddles dipped into a fast-moving stream, was perfect for powerful, low-lying rivers. The breastshot wheel received water at its center, making it highly efficient for moderate flows, and the overshot wheel, a masterpiece of elegance, channeled water over the top, using the weight of the water itself, not just its push, to drive the mechanism with tremendous torque. This was not just using water, it was a conversation with its very physics. These machines found their most ambitious patrons in the quiet cloisters of monasteries. The Cistercian order, in particular, became legendary hydraulic engineers. Their remote abbeys were not just spiritual centers, they were buzzing industrial hubs. A single monastic complex might feature a cascade of mills along a carefully channeled stream. The first mill would grind grain for bread. The next would power hammers for beating and cleansing woven cloth in a process called fulling. Further downstream, another mill's power would operate giant bellows for a forge or drive trip hammers to crush ore. This was an assembly line powered entirely by gravity and water, a symphony of industry echoing through the river valleys. The scale of this transformation is etched into the Domesday Book, the Great Survey of England completed in 1086. It meticulously records the existence of over 6,000 water mills across the countryside. That is one mill for every few hundred people, a staggering density that reveals how completely medieval society had woven water power into its fabric. The mill was no longer a luxury, it was a fundamental utility, as central to village life as the church or the manor. Some river systems were developed with breathtaking efficiency, featuring multiple mills built in a stair-step sequence. As a river descended, each mill would harness a portion of its energy, then release the water to the next mill downstream, which would capture the remaining force. This created early industrial parks where the kinetic energy of a single river was squeezed out, drop by drop, to power an entire sequence of workshops. This marked a profound shift in the human relationship with water. We had moved beyond simply asking rivers to quench our thirst or feed our fields. Now we were plugging our machines directly into the planet's circulatory system, using the endless, renewable flow to do our work. This medieval water maze of gears and mills, of monks and blacksmiths, was the essential prelude to the roar of the steam engine. It was here, beside these flowing streams, that we first learned to build an economy powered by nature. While medieval Europe harnessed rivers for power, a nation was learning to fight the sea itself. The Netherlands is a country born from water, a place where the very ground beneath your feet is a human creation. For the Dutch, the enemy was not a single river but the entire ocean, with vast tracts of their territory lying below sea level. Their survival depended on a monumental act of reclamation, a process that gave the world the polder system. This was engineering in its most defiant form, the creation of land where none existed before. The method was as brilliant as it was laborious. First, engineers would construct a ring of sturdy dikes around a waterlogged area, a lake, or even a shallow part of the sea. This created a giant, temporary bathtub. The next step was to empty it. For centuries, this was the work of windmills, their sails catching the North Sea breezes to power massive Archimedes screws. These corkscrew-like pumps would lift water from the enclosed area and dump it into a surrounding network of canals, which then carried it away to the sea. It was a slow, meticulous battle, inch by inch, until the seabed lay exposed to the air. The invention of the wind-powered screw pump in the 15th century was a revolution. It replaced less efficient methods and allowed for the drainage of much larger, deeper areas. The water was gone, but the work was not over. The newly exposed land was a salty, waterlogged mudflat. It had to be carefully managed with drainage ditches to draw out the remaining moisture and make the soil sweet, a term they used for land fit for farming. The ultimate expression of this art was the Beemster polder, completed in the early 1600s. This was not just reclaimed land, it was a planned utopia. Surveyors and engineers laid it out with geometric precision, a perfect grid of rectangular fields, straight roads, and orderly canals. It was a masterpiece of Renaissance thinking, applying human reason and order to the raw chaos of nature. This endless struggle forged a unique society. To maintain the polders, everyone had to cooperate. A single weak dike or a neglected canal could spell disaster for an entire region. This created a culture of collective responsibility, where water boards became some of the earliest forms of democratic local government. The Dutch did not just build dikes, they built a social contract rooted in shared survival. Their entire national identity became a testament to the idea that with enough unity and engineering will, you can literally redraw the map. But as the water-wheel-powered industry, another kind of hydraulic revolution was blooming in the sun-drenched villas of Renaissance Italy. Here, engineers and artists joined forces, transforming the raw physics of water into pure spectacle. The garden was no longer a place of quiet cultivation, but a theater of liquid marvels where engineering became a form of poetry. At the Villa d'Este in Tivoli, the very hillside seemed to weep, sing, and roar with water. This was not a simple display of wealth, it was a profound statement of human intellect. Every jet, every cascade was a solved equation. To create the towering fountain of the organ, engineers had to master the siphon, a device that uses air pressure and gravity to lift water over an obstacle and then force it downward with immense pressure. They built a labyrinth of lead pipes and precisely carved stone channels, calculating gradients to build up just the right force to send water soaring into the sky. The famous water organ itself was a mechanical wonder, using a falling column of water to compress air and blow through a set of pipes, filling the garden with automated music. This was hydraulics as performance art. The sheer volume of water required was a feat in itself. They diverted an entire river, the Andean, through a mile-long tunnel carved through the mountain bedrock, all to feed this aquatic playground. Every element was designed for dramatic effect. The 100 fountains was a long pathway where water spouted from a seemingly endless row of sculpted masks, animal heads, and reliefs, each stream a testament to a perfectly balanced water pressure system. The sound was a constant, layered symphony of splashes, trickles, and gushes, a sensory overload that left visitors in awe of the power being so elegantly commanded. This was control over nature elevated to its most beautiful and theatrical form. The message was clear: the patron who commanded such wonders could command the very elements. This fusion of art and engineering reached its grandest scale in the hands of the French. At Versailles, landscape architect André Lenotre faced a problem of almost absurd ambition. Palace grounds were vast, flat, and most critically, far from any major water source. King Louis XIV's vision demanded fountains on an unprecedented scale, hundreds of them, all operating simultaneously to dazzle his court. To make this possible, engineers embarked on one of the most massive hydraulic projects of the age. They constructed the Marly machine, a monstrous contraption on the Seine River that housed 14 giant water wheels. These wheels powered over 200 pumps that strained to lift water more than 500 feet up a hillside through a network of pipes and aqueducts. It was a deafening, shuddering colossus of wood and metal, a machine that consumed a fortune and required constant maintenance, all to push water against gravity for the sake of spectacle. The result was a landscape where water danced to a human tune. At the Apollo fountain, the sun god's chariot seemed to erupt from the water, drawn by powerful horses, their forms shimmering under a canopy of spray. The sheer pressure needed to create these dynamic sculptures required immense reservoirs and carefully calibrated nozzles. The gardens of Versailles were not just a display of beauty, they were the bleeding edge of 17th century pump technology and fluid dynamics. This was the ultimate expression of a new idea that water engineering could transcend mere function. It could be the medium for breathtaking art, a tool for political theater, and a living demonstration that human genius had unraveled the secrets of nature not just to survive, but to create sublime wonder. The gentle power of the medieval water wheel soon gave way to an age of titanic ambition. The Industrial Revolution demanded rivers do more than turn a single millstone. they were now expected to power entire cities of industry and weave nations together with liquid highways. This was water engineering on a scale never before conceived, a furious expansion of the water maze to feed the insatiable appetite of the machine. Canals became the arteries of this new world. In England, the Bridgewater Canal carved a path through the countryside, a man-made river so efficient it halved the price of coal in the city of Manchester overnight. It was not dug by following the lay of the land, but by defying it. Engineers used precise surveying to plot its level course, then cut through hills, spanned valleys with aqueducts, and pierced the earth with tunnels. Their most brilliant invention was the lock, a water-filled chamber that acted as a liquid elevator, raising and lowering boats between different levels of the canal. A boat would enter the lock, massive gates would close behind it, and then water would either flood in to lift it up or drain out to lower it down. This simple yet profound mechanism allowed these artificial waterways to climb over hills and cross entire countries, creating a seamless network for moving raw materials and finished goods. But canals were only the transport system. The factories themselves still ran on water power. Elaborate mill races diverted river water into channels that built up immense pressure before crashing onto the blades of giant water wheels. These were no longer the rustic wheels of a village mill, but colossal iron and wood structures that shook the foundations of sprawling textile factories. The rhythmic thrum of the wheel became the heartbeat of industry, driving countless looms and spinning frames through a labyrinth of belts and shafts. Even the arrival of steam did not immediately dethrone water. In a fascinating twist, many of the earliest steam engines were not used for direct power. Their primary job was to act as giant pumps, working day and night to lift water from the bottom of a mill system back up to the top, replenishing the mill pond so the water wheel could run continuously. Steam, in its infancy, served to sustain the hydraulic empire that had come before it. This engineering frenzy extended to the burgeoning cities, where the sheer concentration of people created a desperate need for clean water. In New York, the Croton Aqueduct was a project of almost Roman scale, bringing fresh water from distant reservoirs through a system of tunnels and bridges to quench the thirst of a metropolis. This was not a luxury, it was a matter of survival, combating disease and fire in a rapidly growing urban landscape. The entire Industrial Revolution was at its core a hydraulic event. It was the moment humanity learned to orchestrate water on a continental scale, using it to power, connect, and sustain a new way of life. Every coal-fired train, every bale of cotton, every expanding city was ultimately propelled by the deliberate, engineered flow of water. Across a continent of impossible scale, American engineers faced a challenge that dwarfed the canals of Europe. They were not just managing a river, but an entire geography, and their solution was to stitch together an inland sea with the ocean. The Erie Canal was more than a ditch. It was a 363-mile-long suture holding together the young nation's economic future. Its completion in 1825 created a liquid highway from the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean, allowing goods and people to flow westward and agricultural wealth to pour east. Before the canal, the Appalachian Mountains formed a near-impenetrable barrier. Transporting goods overland was a slow, expensive ordeal. The canal demolished that barrier. A farmer in Ohio could now ship a barrel of flour to New York City for 1/10 of the previous cost. This single waterway transformed New York into the Empire State, a commercial titan whose dominance was built on engineered water. The construction itself was a marvel of improvised ingenuity. Without formal engineering schools, the project was led by amateurs and surveyors who learned by doing. Their most brilliant innovation was in conquering elevation. The land between the Hudson River and Lake Erie rose over 500 feet. To manage this climb, they built a sequence of 83 locks, essentially liquid stair steps that gently lifted and lowered boats across the landscape. They even built aqueducts to carry the canal itself over existing rivers so that their man-made stream flowed majestically above natural ones. It was a water maze laid across the map with breathtaking ambition. This philosophy of domination found a different expression in the arid West. When Mormon settlers arrived at the Great Salt Lake in 1847, they were confronted with a desert. Their survival depended on a collective effort of water control that echoed ancient Mesopotamia. They immediately began digging irrigation canals, diverting water from mountain streams to the parched soil. Their success proved that even the most inhospitable desert could be made to bloom through coordinated, community-driven water management. This model of reclaiming the wilderness through hydraulic will become a template for Western expansion. Then came the gold rush, and with it, a more violent form of water engineering. In the Sierra Nevada foothills, miners realized that the gentle panning of riverbeds was not enough. They needed to move mountains, and they found their tool in water. Hydraulic mining used massive canvas hoses and iron nozzles to shoot jets of water at pressures previously unimaginable. These monstrous water cannons, fed by intricate networks of dams and flumes from high in the mountains, could wash away entire hillsides in minutes. The sediment-laden water, now thick as concrete, would be channeled through long sluices where the heavy gold would settle out. It was an application of raw hydraulic force on an industrial scale, turning rivers into tools of demolition. But this power came with a devastating price. The tailings from these operations, the washed-away earth, choked the rivers of Central California. Vast quantities of silt cascaded downstream, burying farmland under feet of gravel and mud. The sediment raised riverbeds, causing catastrophic flooding in towns like Marysville, where the streets sometimes ran higher than the first floors of buildings. The landscape was altered so profoundly that the environmental damage is still visible today. This was the dark side of the ambition, a stark lesson that redirecting water on such a scale meant redirecting consequences too. American water engineering in the 19th century was driven by a singular belief that nature was an obstacle to be overcome, a resource to be harnessed without limit. It was a philosophy that built a nation, forging economic corridors and making deserts productive, yet it also sowed the seeds for conflicts and ecological reckonings that would define the century to come. The ambition to redirect water reached its ultimate expression not in the fields but on the map itself. Two thin blue lines carved across continents would permanently twist the threads of global trade. The Suez and Panama canals were not just engineering projects, they were acts of geographical alchemy, turning land into sea. The Suez Canal, completed in 1869, was a study in elegant, brutal simplicity. For 120 miles, engineers cut a saltwater trench straight through the Egyptian desert, a stark blue scar on a canvas of sand. Its most brilliant feature was what it lacked: locks. The Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea sat at nearly the same level, allowing ships to sail through this artificial strait as if it had always been there. The effect was immediate and profound. A journey from London to Mumbai, once a months-long ordeal around the Cape of Good Hope, was suddenly slashed by over 4,000 miles. The world had physically shrunk. Europe could now reach the riches of Asia with a speed that rewrote economics and empires. But if Suez was a clean cut, Panama was a hydraulic labyrinth. Here, engineers faced a problem of staggering complexity: the continental divide. The idea was to cross from the Atlantic to the Pacific, but a mountainous spine stood directly in the way. The French attempt failed catastrophically, defeated by landslides and yellow fever. The Americans, under Chief Engineer John Frank Stevens, adopted a completely different strategy. They would not cut the continent down to sea level, they would lift the ships up and over it. The solution was a monumental system of locks, 3 massive steps on each side of the isthmus. A ship entering from the Atlantic would be guided into a lock chamber. Enormous gates would swing shut behind it, and then, with a quiet, immense power, water would pour in, lifting the 1,000-foot vessel 85 feet into the air. This process would repeat until the ship sailed out not onto the ocean, but onto a vast man-made lake, Gatun Lake, the largest artificial body of water in the world at that time. This lake itself was a feat of drowning, created by damming a river and flooding a valley. The ship would sail across this inland sea before descending through another sequence of locks on the Pacific side. The entire system was a delicate, precise dance of gravity and pumps, using the abundant rainwater of the Chagas River to fill the locks, with excess water channeled to prevent the lake from overflowing. The scale of innovation was breathtaking. The lock gates themselves were engineering marvels, hollow giants of steel that were so perfectly balanced 2 men could open them against the pressure of millions of gallons of water. These 2 canals, Suez and Panama, became the new valves of global commerce. They demonstrated that no natural barrier, not a desert isthmus nor a mountain range, was insurmountable. Humanity had not just redirected rivers, it had begun to rewire the planet's own connections, forging shortcuts that would define the flow of power, goods, and history for the next century and beyond. This concrete revolution marked the final, most audacious chapter in our quest to dominate rivers. The 20th century did not simply build dams, it declared war on the very flow of continents, and the Hoover Dam became its first great monument. Rising from the Black Canyon of the Colorado River, it was more than a structure, it was a statement carved in concrete. Its design was a masterpiece of physics, an arch-gravity dam that used its own immense weight and curved shape to hold back the river, a perfect fusion of form and force. But the engineering challenges were as colossal as the dam itself. Pouring that much concrete all at once was impossible. It would have taken over a century to cool and cure, cracking under its own internal heat. The solution was brilliantly simple yet painstakingly complex. Engineers designed a labyrinth of 1-inch steel pipes inside the concrete forms. As they poured the massive blocks, they circulated ice-cold water from a refrigeration plant built just for this purpose through these pipes, actively sucking the heat out of the setting concrete. Once a block had cooled and hardened, the pipes were filled with grout, turning the entire dam into a single, monolithic entity. This was industrial-scale medicine for a concrete fever. The scale of human organization matched the engineering ambition. Thousands of workers, known as high scalers, dangled from cliffs on ropes to clear the canyon walls, while others faced the deadly hazards of tunnels, rockfalls, and the immense Colorado River itself. Their work created Lake Mead, the largest reservoir in the United States at the time, a vast bathtub holding 2 years of the river's entire flow. The dam tamed floods, provided irrigation water that made the deserts bloom, and generated enough electricity to power entire cities, fueling the growth of the modern American Southwest. It was the ultimate expression of control, a belief that with enough concrete and will, any river could be mastered. This model soon went global. Egypt built the Aswan-High Dam across the Nile, finally ending the river's ancient, unpredictable floods and generating enormous power. But this control came at a cost the pharaohs never had to pay. The dam trapped the rich silt that for millennia had fertilized the Nile's floodplain. Farmers now depended on artificial fertilizers, and the Nile Delta, starved of sediment, began to erode into the sea. In the Soviet Union, engineers embarked on gigantic hydroelectric projects in Siberia, harnessing rivers for power while flooding vast expanses of wilderness and displacing ancient communities. And in China, plans began for the most ambitious project of all, the Three Gorges Dam, a structure so massive it would alter the rotation of the Earth by shifting its water mass. Each of these mega-projects delivered undeniable benefits: electricity, flood control, and water security for millions. Yet they also shared a common shadow: ecological disruption on a continental scale and the forced relocation of countless communities. This era represented the peak of a certain confidence, a faith that we could engineer water systems without significant consequence, that the benefits of control would always outweigh the hidden costs of a river silenced. Yet the concrete confidence of that era could not last forever. By the late 20th century, a slow but certain awakening was taking hold. The very rivers we had bent to our will began to speak back, not in the roar of a flood, but in the quiet collapse of ecosystems. The chemical silence Rachel Carson wrote of in her book Silent Spring was echoed by a different kind of silence in dammed valleys, where the ancient pulse of migratory fish was slowly fading away. We had won the battle against river volatility, but we were losing the war for their living essence. This realization sparked a revolutionary shift in thought, a move from domination to negotiation. The first physical signs of this new philosophy were the dam removals. In places like Maine and Wisconsin, communities made a stunning choice. They began taking down old, obsolete dams that had powered long-vanished mills. The goal was simple: to let the river breathe again. The results were breathtakingly rapid. Within days of a dam's removal, water that had been stagnant for a century began to flow clear. Within months, native fish species, whose genetic memory held the map of these upstream passages, returned to spawn in habitats they had not seen in generations. This was not just restoration, it was an apology written in flowing water. From this movement emerged a critical new concept: environmental flows. Engineers and ecologists began working together to calculate something never before considered: how much water a river needed to simply be a river. It was not just about a minimum quantity, but about recreating the natural rhythm of seasons: a small spring flood to trigger fish spawning, a lower summer flow to expose gravel bars for insects. We were learning to manage rivers not just as plumbing, but as living, breathing systems. Nowhere was this ambition more visible than in the vast restoration of Florida's Kissimmee River. Decades earlier, the Army Corps of Engineers had straitjacketed its meandering, 100-mile course into a 50-mile canal for flood control. The ecological cost was catastrophic, with wetlands drying up and waterbird populations plummeting. The restoration project became one of the most ambitious in history, backfilling miles of that dead-straight canal and coaxing the river back into its original wandering path. It was a deliberate act of un-engineering, an admission that a river's messy, inefficient curves were not a flaw, but a feature essential to its health. This was the core of the paradigm shift. A growing humility that recognized our most brilliant water mazes had often solved one problem by creating several others downstream. The question was no longer how much water we could take from a river, but how much we needed to leave in it. This was a fundamental renegotiation of an ancient relationship, moving from master to partner in the great, flowing dance of the water maze. This new era of partnership with rivers now faces its ultimate test. The very climate that gives us rain and snow is shifting beneath our feet, creating a global water crisis of unprecedented complexity. Modern water engineers confront a triple threat: a changing climate, booming populations, and a finite supply of fresh water that is being stretched to its absolute limit. Rising global temperatures are not just making the world warmer, they are fundamentally rewriting the planet's water cycle. Glaciers in the Himalayas and the Andes, the frozen reservoirs that feed the Indus and the Ganges, are melting away. For centuries, these ice fields provided a reliable, slow release of water during dry seasons. Now, that steady drip is turning into a flood, followed by a future trickle. The timing of rains is becoming more erratic, with long, punishing droughts interrupted by intense, catastrophic downpours that the hardened earth cannot absorb. The predictability that ancient engineers relied upon is vanishing. This strain is visible in the world's most famous rivers. The Colorado River, which carved the Grand Canyon, now rarely completes its journey to the sea. Its water is claimed and used long before it can reach its ancient delta. The same story unfolds with the Nile and the Indus, legendary cradles of civilization that are now being consumed by the demands of modern nations. This creates an explosive tension between those who live upstream and those downstream, where every drop diverted for a farm or a city is a drop denied to someone else. The invisible groundwater that once saved civilizations is also being exhausted. In agricultural heartlands from California's Central Valley to the breadbasket of northern India, farmers are drilling deeper and deeper, tapping into aquifers that took thousands of years to fill. We are pumping out this ancient water in a matter of decades, creating a geological debt that cannot be easily repaid. Our cities have become part of the problem. Vast expanses of concrete and asphalt act as a waterproof shell over the landscape. When the heavy rains do come, the water cannot seep back into the earth to replenish those depleted aquifers. Instead, it rushes across the hard surfaces, gathering speed and volume, turning city streets into destructive torrents. The same paved-over areas that prevent groundwater recharge then become the pathways for devastating urban floods. Solving these interconnected puzzles demands a new kind of water maze, one that blends the wisdom of the past with the technology of the future. Ancient techniques like rainwater harvesting, used for millennia in India, are being rediscovered to capture those intense downpours. At the same time, satellite data and smart sensors are helping to create hyper-efficient irrigation systems that deliver water only when and where crops truly need it. The greatest challenge is no longer just about controlling water for human use, but about rebalancing the entire system, ensuring there is enough left for the rivers themselves and the ecosystems they support. How do we quench the thirst of billions while still allowing the planet to breathe? The next evolution of the water maze is unfolding not in concrete or earth, but in lines of code. We have moved from moving rivers to making them intelligent. At the heart of this digital transformation are systems with a long name: supervisory control and data acquisition, though most engineers just call it SCADA. Imagine the entire water distribution network of a modern city, hundreds of miles of pipes, pumps, and valves, all communicating their status to a central brain. A pressure sensor in an underground pipe detects a sudden, anomalous drop. Before that leak can erupt into a geyser and waste millions of gallons, SCADA automatically isolates that section of pipe by closing remote-controlled valves and dispatches a repair crew to the precise location. This is no longer just distribution, it is a living, responsive nervous system for our water. This intelligence is fed by a constellation of advanced sensors scattered throughout our watersheds. Tiny devices in rivers continuously measure chemical composition, alerting operators to pollution spikes within minutes. Meters on farms and in cities track water usage patterns down to the hour, building a vast library of data on how a community truly consumes its most vital resource. This constant stream of information fuels predictive models that can forecast water demand for a city days in advance, or predict the water yield from a melting snowpack months before it happens. We are shifting from reactive management to anticipatory stewardship. Artificial intelligence now enters the control room, tackling problems of dizzying complexity. Managing a single large reservoir is a perpetual puzzle, balancing the need to store water for a drought, keep space empty for a potential flood, generate hydropower, and release enough cold water downstream to keep native fish alive. An AI algorithm can process decades of weather data, real-time inflow measurements, and power grid demands to find the optimal solution a human mind might miss, making minute adjustments to gate levels to serve all these masters at once. It is a digital conductor orchestrating a symphony of competing needs. Perhaps the most powerful tool is the digital twin, a perfect virtual replica of a physical water system. An engineer can create a digital twin of an entire river basin, complete with its dams, aquifers, and farms. Then they can run simulations, asking the ultimate what-if questions. What if a historic rainstorm hits the headwaters? What if we change our cropping patterns? The digital twin models the consequences, showing where floods might crest or how groundwater levels would respond, all without a single drop of real water being risked. It is a crystal ball built on data, allowing us to test our future in a sandbox of ones and zeros. From even higher up, satellites provide a God's eye view. Remote sensing technology can measure the snowpack depth across an entire mountain range, gauge the moisture content in soil from orbit, and even track the subtle rise and fall of the land itself to map invisible aquifers. This macro-scale perspective allows us to manage water across state and national borders, seeing the entire system as one interconnected whole. The digital water maze is a fusion of the microscopic and the planetary, a network of smart sensors on the ground and watchful eyes in the sky. This is the new frontier where the ancient challenge of water management is being solved with the most modern of tools, ensuring that every single drop is not just controlled but understood. Sometimes the most advanced solutions are not new inventions but ancient ideas rediscovered. As we grapple with a thirsty planet, engineers are looking back thousands of years, finding that the old ways hold profound wisdom for our modern crises. The ancient Persian Qanat, for instance, is experiencing a quiet revival. In arid regions from Oman to Arizona, modern engineers are building updated versions of these underground tunnels. The principle is identical: use gravity to transport water from a highland aquifer to where it is needed, completely protected from the evaporating sun. This ancient technology is proving to be a stunningly efficient answer to one of the biggest water losses in hot climates. The revival extends to the magnificent stepwells of India. These breathtaking structures, which descend deep into the earth like inverted temples, were not just architectural marvels, they were sophisticated rainwater harvesting systems. Their vast, stair-stepped walls captured every drop of monsoon rain, channeling it into subterranean reservoirs that would sustain communities through the long, dry season. Today, from Rajasthan to Texas, the simple, profound logic of capturing rain where it falls is being embraced once more, with modern cisterns and catchment systems reducing the strain on over-tapped municipal supplies. This backward glance is even reshaping our cities. China's ambitious Sponge City initiative aims to make urban landscapes function more like a natural forest floor. Instead of channeling rainwater away with concrete pipes as fast as possible, these cities are designed to absorb it. They use permeable pavements, green roofs, and constructed wetlands to soak up rainfall, then filter it and reuse it locally. This is a direct echo of ancient principles seen in places like the Indus Valley, where cities were built to work with natural hydrology, not against it. It is a stark contrast to the waterproofed cities of the 20th century. Perhaps the most significant shift is the growing recognition of indigenous knowledge. From the aboriginal fish traps of Australia to the waffle gardens of the Pueblo peoples, communities that have lived in place for millennia developed intricate, sustainable water management practices. These systems were born of deep observation and a long-term relationship with the land, prioritizing balance and resilience over sheer control. Scientists and policymakers are now beginning to consult this ancestral wisdom, realizing that our databases are new, but their data set is thousands of years old. This has given rise to a new scientific field, archaeohydrology. Researchers are not just digging for artifacts, they are digging for hydrological insight. By studying how the Nabateans thrived in the desert of Petra or how the Khmer Empire managed the monsoons at Angkor Wat, we are learning how past civilizations succeeded and sometimes failed in their own water mazes. This fusion of past and future represents a crucial maturation in our relationship with water. We are no longer just masters of concrete and computation. We are becoming students of history and humble partners with the planet, finally learning that some of the most powerful engineering solutions were written not in code, but in stone and earth long ago. This new urban philosophy treats water not as a threat, but as a resident. The old model was simple and brutal: get the water off the streets and out of the city as fast as possible through concrete pipes. But that just pushed the problem downstream, creating pollution and wasting a precious resource. The new approach is to invite the water to stay a while, to be cleaned, absorbed, and even reused. This is achieved through a concept known as green infrastructure, a living, breathing network woven into the city itself. Picture a street where the sidewalk is made of a special porous pavement. When it rains, the water soaks right through this surface into the ground below, naturally filtering out pollutants instead of rushing into a storm drain. On the rooftops of office buildings, lush gardens of hardy plants absorb rainfall, reduce the urban heat island effect, and create habitats for birds and insects. In parking lots and along roadways, shallow, beautifully landscaped depressions called rain gardens capture runoff, allowing it to percolate slowly into the soil, recharging the very groundwater we depend on. This is engineering that works with nature's own filtration systems. Singapore, a small island nation with limited natural water sources, has turned this necessity into a global showcase. Their system, branded as NE Water, takes wastewater through a rigorous purification process so advanced it produces water cleaner than what comes from most taps. Using a combination of microfiltration, reverse osmosis, and ultraviolet disinfection, they remove every impurity, creating a high-grade water that is used for industrial purposes and even pumped back into the reservoirs to blend with raw water, which is then treated again for drinking. This closed-loop system has dramatically reduced their reliance on imported water, turning a vulnerability into a strength and proving that with the right technology, every drop can be used again and again. Other cities are preparing for a different kind of water event, the sudden, overwhelming cloudburst. Copenhagen, after a catastrophic flood in 2011, completely reimagined its cityscape. Their plan transforms the city into a temporary sponge during heavy rains. Parks are designed with gentle, bowl-like contours that can safely hold millions of gallons of water. Streets are subtly tilted to channel floodwaters into these green reservoirs instead of into basements. Even playgrounds and sports fields are engineered to double as emergency detention basins. This is resilience built into the very fabric of public life, where a park is not just for recreation, but a vital part of the city's hydraulic defense. Tokyo, a metropolis built on low-lying ground, confronts flooding with a different kind of grandeur. Beneath the bustling suburbs lies a cathedral of concrete, the metropolitan area outer underground discharge channel. This is a staggering subterranean world, a network of massive tunnels that feed into 5 enormous silos, each large enough to hold a space shuttle. During a typhoon, when rivers threaten to overflow, floodgates open and divert the surging water into this underground labyrinth, where it is stored until the danger passes and can be safely pumped into a major river. It is a silent, colossal guardian, a testament to the scale of engineering required to protect one of the world's largest cities from nature's fury. Even the way cities grow food is being rehydrated. Rooftop farms and vertical gardens are increasingly using aquaponics, a system where fish and plants are grown together in a recirculating environment. The nutrient-rich water from the fish tanks fertilizes the plants, and the plants, in turn, filter and clean the water, which is then returned to the fish. This symbiotic loop uses 90% less water than traditional agriculture, bringing food production directly into the urban core while conserving one of our most vital resources. From the towering underground cisterns to the humble rain garden, these innovations mark a fundamental shift. Cities are no longer just consumers of water, they are becoming its stewards, learning to live within the water cycle rather than fighting against it, creating a new kind of water maze for the 21st century. But for all our engineering brilliance, a river does not recognize the lines we draw on a map. In a world of growing thirst, the control of a river that flows across borders is the ultimate diplomatic puzzle, a test of whether nations can share a single vein of life. The Nile River Basin is a perfect example of this complex challenge. 11 countries rely on its waters, from the highlands of Ethiopia to the deserts of Egypt. For centuries, Egypt enjoyed a dominant position, its historical rights virtually unquestioned. But as upstream nations like Ethiopia seek their own development, building massive dams for electricity and irrigation, a fundamental tension emerges. Every drop of water held back upstream is a drop that may not reach the farms and cities downstream. This creates a delicate, high-stakes negotiation over who gets how much and when, a conversation where engineering projects become instruments of foreign policy. Cooperation is not just preferable, it is essential for regional stability. A remarkable model for this exists in one of the world's most politically volatile regions. The Indus Waters Treaty between India and Pakistan was brokered by the World Bank in 1960. Its genius lies in its simplicity and separation. The treaty divides the 6 rivers of the Indus system, giving the eastern rivers to India and the western rivers to Pakistan. More importantly, it created a permanent mechanism for cooperation, a commission where water experts from both nations meet regularly to share data and resolve disputes. This channel of communication has remained open, even as other diplomatic relations have frozen and military conflicts have erupted. It proves that water, when managed with clear rules, can become an island of stability in a sea of political turmoil. Yet not all river basins have such robust frameworks. Along the Mekong River in Southeast Asia, a different dynamic unfolds. Downstream countries like Cambodia and Vietnam depend on the river's natural flood pulse for their fisheries and agriculture. But upstream in China, a cascade of large dams now regulates the flow. These dams can store water during the wet season and release it during the dry season, which sounds beneficial. But they also trap the nutrient-rich silt that fertilizes the floodplains and can disrupt the migration of fish. The Mekong River Commission attempts to foster cooperation, but without China as a full member, its power is limited. This situation highlights a recurring theme: the upstream nation holds a powerful card: the ability to unilaterally change the river's character for everyone downstream. In the arid Middle East, water scarcity sharpens these tensions to a razor's edge. Control over springs, aquifers, and rivers has repeatedly become a military objective and a strategic bargaining chip. When a resource is that fundamental to survival, its management is never just technical, it is deeply and irrevocably political. Recognizing this, the international community has worked to build a legal foundation for cooperation. Agreements like the United Nations Watercourses Convention provide guidelines for reasonable and equitable use, and for the duty not to cause significant harm to neighboring states. But these frameworks are only as strong as the political will behind them. Enforcement remains a profound challenge in a world where national sovereignty often trumps shared necessity. This is the final layer of the Great Water Maze. We have learned to move rivers with concrete and control them with code, but the most intricate labyrinth is the one we have built from borders and treaties. The future of our rivers will depend on a difficult but essential balance: a willingness to see a shared watercourse not as a resource to be claimed, but as a system to be managed together. The air itself could become our next reservoir. Engineers are already perfecting machines that pull drinking water directly from humid air, a technology that sounds like science fiction but is rapidly becoming science fact. These atmospheric water generators work by cooling air until its moisture condenses, much like a dehumidifier, but with a crucial focus on purity and efficiency. In a coastal desert city where fog rolls in from the ocean but rain almost never falls, such a device could tap into that invisible reservoir, providing a decentralized, resilient source of clean water that bypasses the need for long pipelines or vulnerable central plants. The potential to harvest water from the sky could turn every building into its own well. Meanwhile, our relationship with the ocean is also being redefined. Desalination, the process of turning seawater fresh, has long been an energy-hungry and expensive solution, but new materials are changing the equation. Advanced membranes, some only a few atoms thick, are now being designed to filter salt from water with far less pressure and energy. Imagine a future where sprawling coastal farms are irrigated not with precious groundwater, but with affordable water from the sea, fundamentally altering the geography of agriculture. The dream is a simple one: to make the world's vast, undrinkable oceans a practical resource for all. This revolution in filtration extends to the microscopic realm. Nanotechnology is creating smart membranes that do more than just remove impurities. They can be programmed to selectively target specific pollutants while allowing beneficial minerals to remain. Think of a filter that could strip dangerous heavy metals from industrial wastewater, but leave behind the calcium and magnesium that make water healthy to drink. This is precision water treatment, a move from brute force cleaning to intelligent, selective purification. Nature itself remains our most sophisticated engineer. Scientists are intently studying how mangrove forests naturally filter salt and pollutants, and how wetland ecosystems purify water with effortless grace. This field of biomimicry seeks to copy these brilliant natural designs, perhaps by creating artificial wetlands that treat city sewage with plants and microbes instead of harsh chemicals. Why build an expensive, energy-intensive treatment plant when we can cultivate a living, self-sustaining ecosystem that does the job beautifully? The ultimate test of water efficiency is happening far from Earth. On the International Space Station, every single drop of water is precious. Astronauts sweat their breath. Even their urine is captured, purified, and recycled back into drinking water in a nearly perfect closed loop. The systems developed for these off-world habitats represent the gold standard in water recycling, pushing technologies that may one day allow our cities to operate with a similar waste-not philosophy. Yet some visions remain staggering in their scale. A few engineers and futurists propose continental-scale water redistribution, imagining canals and pipelines that would move water from water-rich regions like the Pacific Northwest to the parched American Southwest. While technically possible, such mega-projects raise profound environmental questions. What would be the ecological cost of diverting an entire river system? The political hurdles are equally immense, pitting state against state and nation against nation in battles over liquid assets. These grand schemes highlight a persistent tension between our immense engineering capabilities and the complex web of consequences they can unleash. From harvesting the sky to recycling every drop in space, these emerging technologies represent the next logical step in our ancient quest. They prove that the great water maze is still being redrawn, its paths now charted not just with shovels and concrete, but with advanced polymers, biological insights, and data. The next chapter of water engineering will likely be written with tools we are only beginning to conceive, continuing a story that began when the first human decided a river could be asked to take a different course. Behind every engineered river lies a human story of power and exclusion. That ancient Mesopotamian law which fined a farmer for flooding his neighbor's field was more than just a regulation. It was an early blueprint for a social hierarchy built on water access. Who received water first and how much was a decision that could elevate one community and impoverish another, creating patterns of privilege and disadvantage that have echoed through the millennia. This is the enduring shadow of the water maze, a world where control over the flow of life has always meant control over the lives of people. In countless cultures, this burden has fallen disproportionately on women and girls. The daily trek to a distant well or river is not just a chore, it is a profound theft of time. Hours that could be spent in a classroom, learning to read and write, or developing a skill to earn an income, are instead consumed by the physical labor of carrying heavy loads of water back to the family. This daily journey locks generations into a cycle of limited opportunity, where the simple act of securing water for survival becomes the very barrier to a different future. The inequality becomes even starker in the shadow of modern skylines. Within the sprawling informal settlements that ring many of the world's megacities, the formal water network often simply ends. There are no pipes, no taps, no meters. Here, water becomes a costly commodity, sold by private vendors at prices that can be 10 or 20 times higher than what connected households pay. A family living in a wealthy neighborhood receives clean, plentiful water delivered directly into their home for a modest fee, while another family, just a few miles away, must spend a large portion of its meager income on water of questionable quality, often collected from a tanker truck. This is the paradox of urban thirst, where the poor pay the most for the least reliable water. For indigenous communities, the struggle is for something even more fundamental than access. It is for recognition. Their traditional knowledge of local springs, rivers, and aquifers is often dismissed, even as their sacred water sources are dammed, diverted, or polluted by large-scale agricultural and industrial projects. The fight is not merely about resource allocation, but about cultural survival and the right to maintain a relationship with waters that have sustained their identity for centuries. In response to these deep-seated inequities, a powerful global movement has emerged, arguing that clean water is not a product to be bought and sold to the highest bidder, but a basic human right. This principle challenges the very architecture of modern water management. insisting that our technical brilliance in moving rivers must be matched by a moral commitment to distributing its benefits justly. The most sophisticated desalination plant or the smartest digital twin is a hollow victory if its water only flows to the powerful and the privileged. Building a truly resilient water future requires more than advanced engineering. It demands equitable governance. It means creating systems where community voices, especially those of women and the marginalized, are heard in decisions about water allocation. It means ensuring that the benefits of a new dam or irrigation canal are shared fairly with those living upstream and downstream. The ultimate test of our mastery over water is not measured in cubic meters diverted or megawatts generated, but in whether every single person has a secure and dignified place within the great water maze we have built. Our journey through the great water maze of history reveals a profound truth: that our relationship with water is one of our most defining human characteristics. The ancient engineers who first diverted a river did far more than move earth and stone. They were setting in motion a chain of events that would build cities, forge empires, and redirect the very course of history itself. From the whispered instructions of the first irrigation canal to the silent calculations of a digital twin, our quest to understand and manage water has been a relentless driver of innovation. It is a story of extraordinary vision and breathtaking courage, of projects that must have seemed like pure madness to their contemporaries. What kind of person looks at a mountain and decides to tunnel through it for water, or stands before a raging river and believes it can be persuaded into a new path? That spirit of determined ingenuity connects the builders of Qanats to the engineers of the Hoover Dam. Yet for all our technological progress, the fundamental challenge remains strikingly familiar. We are still grappling with the same essential balance: the need to meet human demands while respecting the environmental systems that sustain us. The triumphs of the past, from the self-cleaning Dujiangyan to the aqueducts of Rome, offer powerful lessons in working with nature's logic. Their failures, the silted canals and salinated fields, stand as stark warnings against the arrogance of total control. As we confront a century of unprecedented thirst, we would do well to remember both. The Great Water Maze continues to evolve, its paths now charted with data and policy as much as with concrete. Our place within this ever-changing labyrinth will be determined by the wisdom we choose to apply, by whether we see ourselves as masters of the flow or as its most responsible stewards. The current of history still follows the courses we carve for water, making this our most urgent and enduring engineering imperative. If this journey through the world's great water mazes has captured your imagination, I invite you to join me as we explore further. By subscribing to this channel and tapping the notification bell, you will not miss our upcoming deep dives into other historical mysteries that have quietly shaped our world. Your perspective is a vital part of this conversation. Which ancient water engineering feat left you most in awe? Was it the silent genius of the Persian Qanat, or the graceful persuasion of China's Dujiangyan system? Perhaps you know of another remarkable historical waterworks we should investigate together. Please share your thoughts, your questions, and your own local stories in the comments below. Let's keep this exploration flowing. If you enjoyed our trip through the hydraulic wonders of the past, liking this video helps others discover these stories, and sharing it can spark fascinating conversations with friends about how human ingenuity has redirected the very currents of history. There are countless more tales of innovation waiting to be uncovered, and I look forward to discovering them with you.